Welcome back to Beyond the Veil Stories, where the mysterious and the mundane meet in the middle. Today I'm bringing you a story from my collection. I hope you're ready to hear The Haunting of Black Hollow Woods. If you enjoy the story and wish to be notified when I post, subscribe and turn on notifications. Now, let's journey beyond the veil. I've always been fascinated by the unknown, drawn to stories that send shivers down my spine. Growing up in a small town in Washington state, I heard countless ghost stories and cryptid legends whispered around campfires. But none captivated me quite like the tales of Black Hollow Woods. They warned of a dark presence lurking within. A creature known as the Hollow Man, locals described it as a being caught between the human and the animal, pale and gaunt, with glowing amber eyes that could see right into your soul. For years, I dismissed these stories as mere folklore, but that changed one fateful autumn night. My friends and I decided to venture into those very woods, eager to test the tales against reality. Ben, our self-proclaimed leader, was confident we'd find nothing but shadows. Sarah and I shared skeptical glances, but kept quiet. Armed with flashlights, camping gear, and bravado, we set off on a crisp evening, the air tinged with the scent of fallen leaves. The trees loomed overhead, their branches intertwining like fingers reaching for the sky, casting shadows that danced in the fading light. As we hiked deeper into the woods, laughter echoed between the trees, a comforting sound against the stillness. But as the sun sank lower, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, the playful banter faltering, as we felt an unshakable weight pressing in on us. I glanced at my friends, trying to shake off the sensation that we were being watched. But no one spoke about it. Fear had a way of silencing us, weaving a tapestry of dread that held us captive. Finally, we found a clearing bathed in the soft light of the moon. It felt like a sanctuary, a reprieve from the oppressive shadows. We pitched our tents, the sounds of rustling fabric mingling with the crackle of the fire as we gathered around, eager to share ghost stories. It was Ben who first brought up the Hollow Man, laughing dismissively as he recounted the legend. "It's just a story to scare kids," he said, tossing another log onto the fire. I shifted uneasily, my heart racing as I stared into the flames, feeling a primal instinct that warned against such flippancy. "It might not be just a story," I murmured, but my voice was drowned out by their laughter. I felt alone in my unease, as if the woods themselves were listening, waiting for the moment to strike. We settled into a rhythm of jokes and shared memories, but as the night deepened, I found myself increasingly restless. Something was off. The forest seemed to hum with life, its sounds growing louder, sharper, and more menacing. When night fully enveloped us, one by one, my friends retreated to their tents, exhaustion overtaking them. I remained by the fire, the warmth battling the creeping chill, but sleep eluded me. Instead, I listened to the rustling leaves and the occasional call of an owl echoing in the darkness. It was then that I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from outside my tent. My heart raced, and I sat up, straining to hear better. The tapping continued, slow and deliberate, each sound sending chills up my spine. I grabbed my flashlight, uneasily unzipping the tent flap to peer outside. The fire had died down to embers, casting long, flickering shadows that danced across the clearing. As I peered into the inky darkness, I felt a growing sense of dread. The tapping persisted, echoing in the stillness. I glanced around, my instinct screaming that I was not alone. I shone my flashlight into the darkness, searching for the source, but all I saw were the trees, standing sentinel as if they were watching me. My heart raced as I considered waking my friends, but fear held me back. I didn't want to alarm them unnecessarily. Just then, a figure darted between the trees, pale and swift, disappearing into the darkness before I could process what I saw. My breath caught in my throat. Was it a deer, or something more sinister? I felt the weight of the stories pressing down on me, every whispered warning rising in my mind. The tapping continued, now accompanied by a low growl that reverberated through the air, sending chills through my body. Instinctively, I took a step back, my heart pounding in rhythm with the tapping. "Ben, Sarah," I whispered, my voice barely carrying. But my friends didn't stir. The sounds around me became louder, enveloping me in a cacophony of rustling leaves and distant howls. The growl grew more pronounced, and I felt a primal urge to run. I gripped the flashlight tightly, heart racing, as I peeked out again, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Suddenly I heard Ben's voice, calling out from his tent, "Emma, is everything okay?" Relief washed over me momentarily, but it was quickly eclipsed by the urgency of the situation. I needed to warn them. I unzipped my tent and stepped out, the cool night air wrapping around me like a shroud. I turned toward their tents, ready to call out to them, when I saw it, a pale figure lurking at the edge of the clearing, its amber eyes glowing in the darkness. Fear gripped my heart, and I froze. The Hollow Man! My mind screamed as I took a step back, panic rising in my chest. I felt as if I had stumbled into a nightmare from which I couldn't wake. It stood tall and gaunt, its skin stretched tight over its bones, a grotesque imitation of humanity. The tales hadn't done it justice. Seeing it in person was far more terrifying than I could have imagined. I heard my friends stirring behind me, the sound snapping me out of my stupor. "Emma, what's wrong?" Ben called again, his voice tinged with concern. I didn't have time to explain. I needed to get them out of their tents. "Get out, now," I shouted, urgency pouring from my lips as I backed away, keeping my eyes on the creature. As if sensing my fear, the Hollow Man moved closer, its footsteps soundless against the forest floor. I could see its long, bony fingers stretching toward me, an invitation to a darkness I could not accept. I turned to run, my instinct screaming at me to escape. I sprinted toward the trees, the world around me blurring as adrenaline surged through my body. The cold air stung my lungs, but I couldn't stop. I had to get away. "Emma," Ben shouted, but I was already lost in the forest, branches clawing at my skin as I plunged deeper into the night. My heart thudded in my chest, and the tapping sound echoed behind me, a relentless reminder that I was being hunted. I didn't know where I was going, but the primal urge to survive propelled me forward. I burst into a small clearing, my heart racing as I stumbled to a halt, panting heavily. Panic washed over me, and I pressed my back against a tree, desperately trying to catch my breath. I could hear the faint rustling of leaves behind me, the tapping sound growing nearer. I felt like prey, hunted and helpless. The only comfort I had was the dim light from my flashlight, flickering as if it, too, feared the darkness surrounding us. "Emma, where are you?" Ben's voice rang out, urgent and filled with fear. I knew I had to find him and Sarah, but the creature was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I glanced around, straining to hear anything beyond the sound of my racing heart. The tapping had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed in on me from all sides. "Over here!" I finally called out, my voice trembling as I struggled to keep my fear at bay. I took a deep breath, willing myself to be brave. I needed to lead them to safety. "We have to leave the woods," I shouted, hoping they could hear me. But before I could react, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned, my breath hitching as the Hollow Man stepped into the clearing, its pale form illuminated by the faint glow of my flashlight. It was closer now, its amber eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I felt paralyzed, rooted in place as I stared into those haunting depths. The creature opened its mouth, revealing rows of sharp, uneven teeth. I was sure it was going to scream or growl, but instead, a whispering sound escaped its lips, a voice that was both familiar and foreign. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, the words echoing in my mind. My skin prickled with fear, and I fought against the instinct to scream. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching from behind me. "Emma!" Ben shouted, breaking through the fog of terror that had enveloped me. The sight of my friends bolstered my courage, and I instinctively stepped back, urging them to take cover. "Run!" I shouted. "It's here!" Ben and Sarah rushed toward me, their faces etched with fear. We formed a huddle, the three of us, as the Hollow Man advanced, its presence overwhelming. "What do we do?" Sarah whispered, panic creeping into her voice. I shook my head, unable to answer. "We have to find a way out of here," I cried, desperation lacing my words. The creature moved closer, its eyes narrowing as if sizing us up. I felt the weight of its gaze, a suffocating force that pressed down on me, making it difficult to breathe. "We can't fight it," Ben yelled, his voice rising. "We need to go. Now." He grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the creature as it lunged forward, its claws swiping through the air. We darted to the side, narrowly avoiding its grasp, our instincts kicking in as we bolted deeper into the woods. As we ran, the darkness seemed to close in around us, the trees becoming a maze that disoriented us. Every direction felt the same, shadows stretching and shifting, making it impossible to find our way. My heart raced, fear coursing through me as I could still hear the tapping echoing in the distance, a haunting reminder that we were not alone. "We need to find the road," I shouted, glancing back at my friends as we pushed onward. "There has to be a way out." With each step, I felt the forest closing in, its grip tightening as if trying to keep us trapped within its depths. As we navigated through the underbrush, I caught glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye. The Hollow Man was still pursuing us, its growls echoing through the night air, chilling me to the bone. I could feel its presence, a dark cloud looming just beyond our reach as we raced against time, the shadows stretching behind us. "Over there!" Sarah suddenly yelled, pointing to a faint light filtering through the trees. I squinted, hope igniting within me. It had to be the road. "Let's go." We pushed forward, our legs burning with exertion, the adrenaline propelling us towards salvation. As we neared the light, the underbrush began to thin, and I could see the outline of the road ahead, a beacon of safety in the darkness. My heart raced with hope, and I urged my friends to keep moving. "Just a little further," I shouted, pushing through the last barrier of trees that stood between us and freedom. But just as we emerged onto the gravel road, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of the Hollow Man behind us. Its growl resonated through the night, deep and menacing, and my heart sank. I turned to see it emerging from the treeline, its form silhouetted against the moonlight, eyes glowing like twin suns in the dark. A wave of dread washed over me. We were still being hunted. "Run," Ben yelled, and we dashed down the road, the gravel crunching beneath our feet. We were desperate now, sprinting toward the distant glow of streetlights that promised safety. I could hear the creature's footsteps behind us, growing closer, a relentless predator determined to catch its prey. The road stretched endlessly before us, the sound of our pounding hearts mingling with the thudding of footsteps behind us. I glanced back, and terror gripped my chest when I saw it. The Hollow Man was gaining on us, its long limbs moving with unnatural speed. I felt panic rising as I turned back, my focus on the path ahead. "Keep going, don't look back," I shouted, urging my friends to push themselves harder. We were so close, I could almost taste the freedom that awaited us. But fear threatened to paralyze me as I heard the growl again, closer this time. "It's right behind us," I gasped, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I fought against the urge to turn and confront the creature. We raced onward, legs burning, lungs gasping for air, the glow of the streetlights growing brighter with each frantic step. Just as I thought we would escape, I heard a sudden crash behind us, branches snapping and a loud growl that sent a chill down my spine. I didn't dare look back. I focused on the light ahead, the road that would take us to safety. Finally, we reached the edge of the forest, the glow of civilization spilling into the darkness like a promise of salvation. There, Sarah cried, pointing toward a small diner up ahead. We stumbled onto the pavement, feeling the solid ground beneath our feet as we raced toward the flickering neon lights. But just as we reached the door, I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder. I spun around, my heart pounding as I stared into the glowing amber eyes of the Hollow Man. It loomed over me, its long fingers stretching as if to pull me back into the darkness. Fear paralyzed me as I locked eyes with the creature, the legend coming to life in the most terrifying way possible. "Emma, don't!" Ben shouted, pulling me away from its grasp. We pushed through the diner doors, adrenaline coursing through us as we stumbled inside. The moment the door slammed shut, I felt a rush of relief wash over me, but the horror of the encounter lingered. We collapsed into a booth, gasping for breath, adrenaline still coursing through our veins. The diner was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the nightmare we had just escaped. But as we caught our breath, the reality of what we had experienced began to sink in. The Hollow Man was real, and we had barely escaped its clutches. "What just happened?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. I looked at my friends, fear etched on their faces. "We need to figure out what that thing is," I said, trying to steady my racing heart. The diner was filled with the scent of coffee and fries, a strange comfort in the aftermath of our encounter. It's not just a story anymore. It's something much darker. As we sat there, we realized we had to leave Black Hollow Woods behind, but the terror didn't dissipate. I could still feel the weight of its gaze upon me, a reminder that the shadows weren't done with us yet. I knew we had escaped the woods, but we hadn't escaped the darkness. We spent the night in the diner, huddled together in our booth, sipping lukewarm coffee as we recounted every detail of our terrifying experience. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, watched us curiously, but didn't question our frantic whispers. She seemed to sense that we had stumbled into something we couldn't fully comprehend, something that lingered just beyond the veil of reality. "What do you think it was?" Ben asked, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I could see the fear in his eyes mirrored in Sarah's. The comforting hum of the diner felt like a thin veneer over the horror we had faced. "I think it's what the stories said. A guardian of the woods," I replied, my voice low. "Something that doesn't want anyone intruding on its territory." The words hung heavy in the air, a reminder of our reckless choice to challenge the unknown. "What if it comes after us again?" Sarah's voice trembled as she glanced toward the window. The dim light of the diner illuminated her pale face, and I could see the shadows under her eyes, the marks of fear etched deep. "It won't," Ben said, trying to sound brave, but his voice faltered. "We made it out. We're safe now." I wanted to believe him, but a lingering doubt gnawed at me. The woods had been alive with malevolence, and I feared it wouldn't easily let us go. Hours passed as we sat in that booth, the diner emptying out as the night wore on. The waitress eventually brought us more coffee, her gaze lingering on us as if she could sense our turmoil. "You kids all right?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "We're fine," I lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. She nodded slowly, then turned to attend to another table, leaving us alone with our thoughts. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight spilled through the diner windows, bathing us in warmth. The light felt like a balm against the horrors of the night, but I knew that the darkness still loomed. "What do we do now?" I asked, looking at my friends. "We need to tell someone," Ben said decisively. We can't let what happened stay hidden. Who would believe us? Sarah replied, her voice filled with doubt. They'll think we're crazy. I understood her fear. The tales of the Hollow Man were meant to be dismissed, not taken seriously. We can't keep it to ourselves, I insisted, a sense of urgency rising within me. If we don't, it could happen again to someone else. We exchanged glances, the weight of our choice hanging heavily in the air. Finally, we decided to report what we had encountered, convinced that sharing our story might protect others. We left the diner, stepping into the bright morning light. But even as the sun warmed our skin, I felt a chill seep into my bones. I glanced back at the diner, feeling the shadows lurking just beyond my vision. We made our way to the local police station, each step feeling like a march toward an uncertain fate. The stories were never meant to be real, yet here we were, bearing witness to a darkness that refused to be ignored. I hoped that in sharing our experience, we would find answers, anything to help us make sense of the horror we had faced. The police station was quiet as we stepped inside, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead, creating a sterile environment that felt foreign after our harrowing night in the woods. A weary-looking officer greeted us at the front desk, his eyes narrowing in suspicion as we approached. What can I help you with? He asked, his tone flat and uninterested. We need to report something, I started, my heart racing as I struggled to find the right words. Something happened in Black Hollow Woods last night. He raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair, skepticism etched across his face. What happened? We encountered a creature, Ben said, his voice shaky. We call it the Hollow Man. The officer chuckled, shaking his head. You kids and your stories. Those woods are just a bunch of trees and some old folklore. Nothing to worry about. But it's real, I insisted, feeling a rush of frustration. We saw it. It chased us. The officer's expression shifted slightly, but he still seemed unconvinced. Why don't you sit down and tell me what happened? We sat in a small waiting room, recounting every detail of our experience, trying to make him understand the gravity of what we had witnessed. As we spoke, I could see the disbelief in his eyes, and a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. Look, kids, he said when we finished. I appreciate your concern, but you probably just saw a bear or something. I can assure you, nothing is out of the ordinary in those woods. I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. You don't understand. It wasn't an animal. It was something else. Something that shouldn't exist. The officer sighed, his patience wearing thin. If you're worried about safety, I suggest staying away from those woods. It's not the first time I've heard stories, but they're just that, stories. We left the station feeling defeated, our attempts to warn others falling on deaf ears. The sun hung high in the sky, illuminating the town around us, but the brightness felt stark against the shadows that still loomed in my mind. I can't shake the feeling that it's not over, Sarah said as we walked. Her voice was filled with uncertainty, mirroring my own fears. What do you mean? Ben asked, glancing at her. I don't know, she replied, shaking her head. It feels like we only scratched the surface of something much darker. I couldn't help but agree. The woods were more than just a backdrop to our story. They held secrets that we hadn't yet uncovered. As we walked through town, the familiar sights felt strange, as if I were seeing everything through a new lens, one tainted by fear and uncertainty. When we reached our cars, we stood in silence for a moment, uncertainty hanging between us. I felt a strong urge to return to the woods, to confront what we had seen, but fear held me back. We can't go back there, Ben finally said, breaking the silence. Not after what we experienced, but deep down, I knew I wouldn't be able to forget. The stories would linger, and the shadows of the Hollow Man would always be there, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to wander into its realm. As the days passed, the events of that night remained etched in my mind. I struggled to focus on school, and my daily life. The thrill of the woods had morphed into a dark obsession. I often found myself staring into the forest from my bedroom window, imagining the secrets hidden among the trees. The tales of the Hollow Man whispered in my ears like a haunting melody, echoing the fear that clung to me like a shadow. Despite the warnings, I began researching the local legends, delving into old newspaper articles and folklore that spoke of the woods. Each story added another layer to the mystery, filling me with a morbid curiosity that I couldn't shake. I discovered that the woods had a long history, with sightings of strange figures dating back generations. The legends spoke of a guardian spirit, a protector that had turned malevolent, driven by anger and despair. As autumn returned, my friends and I decided to host a small gathering at my house, hoping to lighten the mood and distract ourselves from the darkness that had enveloped us. As we sat around the living room, laughter filled the air, but the conversation inevitably turned back to Black Hollow Woods. "What do you think is really out there?" Ben asked, glancing around at us. "I think it's something beyond our understanding," I replied, the words slipping out before I could stop myself. "Something that was once a protector, but has become twisted." Sarah shivered at my words, and I realized that our encounter had forever altered us. We could no longer look at the woods with innocence. The stories had become a part of us, entwined with our memories. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Hollow Man was still watching, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. I knew that the legends of Black Hollow Woods would linger long after we left, and that we would never truly escape the darkness that had entered our lives. The stories would continue to unfold, shaping the lives of others who dared to wander into the unknown. And as for me, I would carry the weight of that night forever, a reminder of the shadows that lie just beyond the light. Again, thank you for listening to this story. What did you think? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed it, please leave a like. Until next time, when we journey beyond the veil once more.